She starts with the window.
Yeah, that's right. We can just minimize that.
Yeah.
Sorry. Get over here.
Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry for anyone who's cycled in while we were dealing with some tech complications. I see that the table's a little more full. We're going to call the meeting to order right here at 2 p.m. So regardless of any issues, that's no problem. I do want to acknowledge with respect that we're in Robinson Carrier Treaty Territory. Land on which we're gathered is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and known as Bawat'ing. Bawat'ing is home of Garden River First Nations, Badgewana First Nations, and the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis Council. My name is Josh Ingram. For anybody who's been selected for the committee that we haven't been able to touch base or meet before, I'm the supervisor of Downtown Plaza with Community Economic Service Development. And I'd like to take a moment, let's do a roundtable. We have some city staff, some committee members who've served in our community in different facets, but work together at a big table. So maybe I'll just head this.
Hi, welcome everybody. I'm Virginia McLeod. I'm the manager of recreation and culture with the city.
Matt Shoemaker, I'm the mayor.
I'm Sophia Stone. I'm at Stone's Office Supply.
J.V. McDonald, I'm at Steel Time Motors.
I'm Don Reedy. I'm a GM of a couple of hotels, but we have a few properties around town.
Good afternoon, welcome everyone. I'm Brent Lamb, the Deputy CEO of Community Development Enterprise Services. Thanks for being here.
Jason Necrato, I'm Starkets.
Under Riopel, I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, I believe in the downtown. I'm an activist. I'm urbanist and an active transportation advocate.
I'm Dennis Sewell. I'm a writer and designer. Pretty much live downtown and visit all the time. It's my home, so to help out and make a difference.
I'm Isabella Barati and I work in marketing.
My name is Nicole Maioni and I'm the Director of Community Services for the city.
I'm Madison Zupa. I'm the deputy city clerk. I'm just visiting today to talk about procedure bylaw and also do the facilitate the board and committee appointment process. So if there's any questions after regarding any of that, you can feel free to get in touch, but I will not be here for the entire.
Ms. O'Brien declined her availability today. Just moments ago, she said she's down, so she sends her regrets. We'll move on to item number 3, declaration of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest, specifically focused on this agenda and the agenda items on here. Seeing none, excellent. As I continue to chair this, while we don't have one, we're going to look for an adoption of the minutes. Resolved that the agenda for November 10th, 2025 committee meeting be adopted as presented. Can I have a mover? Jay, seconder. I'll do Andre, you're right there. Excellent. Okay, all in favor? Sorry, excellent. Okay, and now I will hand it over to Madison.
Perfect, thanks, Josh. I'm just gonna share the screen for folks that are watching online. Bear with me a moment. Great, so normally midterm and the beginning of a new council term, Rachel Tazinski, the city clerk, and myself go through the procedure bylaw. So this is a new committee, so we're coming in to get it kind of right off the bat. And if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt, or you can save them until the end, or you can ask me offline as well if needed. So meeting procedures for committees of council. So the Downtown Development Committee is a committee of council, it's an advisory committee of council appointed by council with a member of council representative who's the mayor on this particular committee. And yeah, it's going to be about 15 minutes of me talking about how the meetings will run and things like conflict of interest. So if you've not dealt with those things before, then certainly we'll get a high level overview, but certainly there's a lot to the procedure bylaw, so I appreciate if there's a lot of information you need follow-up questions after the fact, that's no problem. So our procedure bylaw is 2025-100. We've had a number of different versions of it over the years. We had a recent procedure bylaw review completed, and we brought a new version of it to council this past spring. But the council's procedure bylaw applies to the calling and proceedings of meetings of council and of the local boards and committees. So as a local board or as a local committee, advisory committee, it applies to this committee. The committee means any advisory committee or subcommittee or similar entity, which is 50% of the members are members of council or local boards. Local boards do not include things like police services or the library board. They have their own pieces of legislation that guide the governance of their boards. So they're exempt from this particular document, but it's certainly, we still do best practices with the library board and those groups to try to keep openness and transparency at the forefront of our minds. Local boards and committees of council also include advisory or other committees and boards whose members are appointed by council for an ongoing purpose, such as this one, and special committees appointed by council or the head of council at any time as deemed necessary. So we just want to talk a little bit about governance and management. Council provides the governance, the oversight. They're the overseeing body. They provide the big picture. They developed the committee. Staff are here as resources to implement the things that council gives us direction to. And the committee is there in an advisory capacity to provide recommendations to council. These are people who are interested in the subject matter, have experience and expertise, and will provide that information to council to make decisions. But ultimately, council's the authority. They're the ones who make the decisions. The advisory committee makes recommendations. And so the advisory committees are subordinate to council. So so everyone knows what that is. So sometimes there's lots of really great ideas that come through the committee, but ultimately they have to be brought back to council for decision making. So the municipality has a number of pieces of legislation and policies and procedures that we have to follow. We'll get into these in a little bit, but basically the Municipal Act is the main piece of legislation where procedure bylaws and open meeting provisions come out of. Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and we'll talk a little bit about that if you have pecuniary interest in the items that are on the agenda. And Municipal Freedom of Information Protection of Privacy Act. Records that come out of this advisory committee are subject to this piece of legislation, so we'll go over that quickly at the end of the presentation, talking about the procedure bylaw mostly and the code of conduct. So the definition of a meeting means any regular, special, or other meeting of a council or local board or committee of either of them where there's two clauses. A quorum is present, so you have to have a quorum of members, and you also have to be materially advancing the business or decision making of the committee. So we say this because if you're all in a room together, say at a local restaurant, and you happen to all be in a room together, you have a quorum, but you're not materially advancing the business of the committee. When you have everybody together and you're materially advancing the business, that's when it's defined as a meeting. We have a special note about group email discussions. So we want to be very careful when we distribute information to one another that we don't end up in a meeting electronically, like via email. So if you have an email that goes out to the quorum of the advisory committee, you have a quorum, and if you start materially advancing business via email, you're constituting a meeting, and there's no way for emails to be able to be open to the public. Like a meeting like this, live streamed to YouTube, open to the public, there's no way for emails to do that. So you just want to make sure if you're sending a piece of information like, hey, there's a great event that's going on downtown, passing information is one thing. But if you start engaging in discussion via email, you could be materially advancing the business of the committee and not be able to meet the open meeting provisions. I actually had pulled recently a report of the Ombudsman's Office of Ontario, and it basically says all members of the committee of this particular municipality should be vigilant in adhering to the individual and collective obligation to ensure a municipality complies with the Municipal Act, and also to be mindful that electronic written communications such as emails sent to a quorum of, in this case, a council, can be considered a meeting under the Municipal Act. So if you start discussing things via email, you could end up in a complaint to the ombudsman's office. But it was basically saying that sometimes, like say if Josh has an important piece of information for the committee, if he sends it out and it's for information purposes only, that's okay. You just can't start engaging in debate or decision making around those items. The agenda, so the agenda typically is set by the chair in consultation with the staff resource, and I'm guessing Josh is gonna be your staff resource for the committee. The agenda needs to be posted to the city website 24 hours in advance, including attachments if there's any. There are gonna be times where things come up and you can't get them, and that's okay, but we wanna make sure that we give the public the chance to see the information as far in advance as possible, and at least 24 hours. So we work with our comms department to make sure that this information is posted to the website. Business considered in order set forth on the agenda. And a member may ask that a motion is placed on the agenda provided they have a seconder. So usually that's done ahead of time, and we can include those in the agenda ahead of time. We talked a little bit about open meetings, so they shall be open to the public and no person shall be excluded therefrom except for improper conduct. The notice is on the city website, so the public can come in. There's no one from the public here in this room today. They may be watching on YouTube, but if a member of the public or media came to the meeting, they certainly can attend, they can observe, they can record. But delegations are separate. So if someone wanted to speak to an item, there's a delegation process, but anyone can come and observe the meeting and record the meeting. This also includes subcommittees. So if this committee decides, hey, we want to focus on a specific task, we're going to develop a subcommittee. Open meeting provisions apply to subcommittees as well. Any questions so far? I'm not going to read this slide. Very small text, and I only include it for reference that you can go into closed for certain matters. So there's this list of reasons that you can go into closed. So if a matter, one common one I think of council is when you're negotiating a disposition or acquisition of a piece of property. I'm not familiar with the content that's going to be discussed in this committee, but if it falls under one of these and you have to go into closed, we obviously work with the clerk's department and our legal team to make sure that we're properly closed. But certainly there are reasons to go into closed. We just want to make sure it's done correctly, and we only go into closed for things that are appropriate and listed in section 239(2) of the Municipal Act. We did note it's permissive but not prescriptive, and that just means we try to keep as much as we can in open. If you don't have to go into closed, we say don't talk about it in open, but there are obviously reasons to do that, but we really encourage open and transparent decision making. So one thing that applies to committees often is education and training. You can go into closed for education and training sessions. If you don't have to, we usually do them in open. Like I know our strategic planning sessions and our education sessions for strategic planning are done in open, so we don't typically go into closed for these, but it's certainly an exception that committees often find themselves looking at. So electronic meetings. When COVID came around, we had to pivot, obviously, to continue council and committee business. So we went to electronic meetings. At that time, the meetings were fully online, fully live streamed, everyone was participating electronically. Now we often have people participating either all in person, electronically, or sometimes hybrid. However, we are looking to have all of our meetings still live streamed on YouTube as we are today. The agenda, and I've talked to the city clerk, and we're going to make revisions to any of the agendas in eScribe to put the new wording as a courtesy. Meetings are available on YouTube. And this is sometimes there's technical malfunctions. Sometimes there's things that happen that cause the meeting to come down off the internet. We are recommending, as per the procedure bylaw, take a 5-minute recess, try to get it back online. If for whatever reason you cannot get it back online, you still can continue the meeting, but we have to make a good effort to get it back online as quickly as possible. The recordings of the board and committee meetings will remain on YouTube until the minutes of this meeting are passed. So they won't stay online for infinity, but they will stay online long enough that people can go and look at them and see what the business of the meeting was. Are there any questions on that? Closed meeting investigations, we talked a little bit about that with the Ombudsman's office, but the Municipal Act provides that a person may request an investigation if they feel that the committee was improperly closed. The Ombudsman office investigates, provides reports, recommendations if they found us to be improperly closed, and council has to pass a resolution to deal with how they're going to address it. And we have had investigations and we have had recommendations from the Ombudsman's office, especially through COVID, where everyone was kind of learning how to manage that. And it's a good way to learn how to do better. So certainly we want to do the best that we can, and we've been engaged with the Ombudsman's office in the past. We don't, we want to try to avoid that, but at the same time, it's something that's available for people to utilize as a tool for closed meeting investigations. So once you elect a chair, the chair will preside. The chair is responsible for the meeting and the conduct of the meeting. The board and committee meetings are held in committee of the whole, which means it's just a bit more relaxed. Like if you watch a council meeting, there's set time limits on speakers and things like that, how many times someone can talk. Committee of the whole is a bit more relaxed. You can have a bit more open dialogue without having to go through all those more formalized time limits and whatnot. It allows for a bit more free flow of the discussion. A member can't disobey, shall not disobey the provisions of the bylaw and breach parliamentary decorum. And that just typically means we're going to be kind to each other. We're going to use kind language. We're going to be respectful of one another. You can have healthy debate. If you have an item on the agenda, you can have a healthy debate, but we need to be respectful of each other's opinions and be respectful and kind throughout that debate. So motions have operative clauses, and if they appear on the agenda, like even we had one to approve the agenda, resolve that, and you always need a mover and seconder. A member who wishes to introduce a motion, like say someone wanted to do a motion right now, it can't be discussed at this meeting. It would be put on as a notice of motion and you would discuss it at the next meeting. So you can't introduce new business that the public has not had a chance to review or kind of contemplate, right? So you don't want to introduce new business, you would put it on the table for the next meeting. Finality of the votes, when you vote on something, unless there's a reconsideration motion, it can't be reintroduced for 12 months. So if you have something and the committee, it gets defeated, you cannot bring it back unless someone from the prevailing side and a seconder who was either voted with the prevailing side or was absent can reintroduce that. So I'm not going to get into the details there. If you have something where you want to bring it back, get in touch with the clerk's office. Josh can talk to us and we can talk more about that. But it's basically to allow or to not allow things to just keep being brought back meeting after meeting after meeting. So it gives a chance for everyone to kind of think and do that. But an actual reconsideration will allow it to be brought back if there's a vote on it that allows that. Keep on topic, straightforward. And the chair needs to, if you find that the group going way off topic, that's the chair's responsibility to bring everybody back. Quorum, so that's the mayor's usually ex officio. And I had to put brackets for this presentation unless formally appointed by council. So the mayor is the council representative for this committee, but is also ex officio member of all of our committees. No business shall be considered unless a quorum is present. So you can't materially advance the business of the committee without quorum. Majority of members, and if it's lost during the meeting, say like you lose during this meeting halfway through, half your committee has to go, the meeting ends. You don't get to continue to have those conversations. However, there is one caveat that if quorum is lost by virtue of a declaration of conflict of interest, so if you have quorum, but you're going to lose it because one member has a conflict, you don't have to end the meeting, you can continue that. And then that person after that conflict of interest will come back into the discussion. So usually staff act as secretary for the committees and they'll keep the minutes, and we say without note or comment. So we don't put the dialogue in the minutes, we just put the actions and what happens. So it's certainly something that keeps the minutes very succinct to what the decision-making points were of the meeting. We'll note things like conflict of interest and those types of things, but there's not any dialogue noted. Provide notice of the meetings, post the minutes, and agenda to the website, and provide for any of the clerical functions of the committee. Common misconception, but the chair of committee votes. So if you're elected chair, you still vote. Every member of the committee will vote, unless conflict of interest is declared, or you're not here. But it's a recorded vote. Everyone votes, no abstention. So if you can't just keep your hand down. And if you keep your hand down, someone will call on you and you'll have to vote. Unless, again, you're not here for that meeting, or if you're away at that time of the meeting. Tied vote is defeated. So if you have something and it ties, it fails. Any questions? We talked about the Ombudsman of Ontario. They're a closed meeting investigator. Other municipalities can choose to have their own closed meeting investigator. They review complaints. They don't overturn decisions, but they will comment on policy and procedure and what they'll direct us on the policy, like they'll give us recommendations. The Integrity Commissioner is one who investigates things around the code of conduct. So as a committee, members of the committee are subject to the code of conduct. Members and council of local boards and committees, application of procedures, rules, and policies, application of conflict of interest to members, request for member advice, and provision of educational material regarding all of the above. So the Integrity Commissioner has a big role to play in terms of the code of conduct. And I will provide Josh a copy of the code of conduct to circulate to everybody to read. I'm not going to go into it in any great depth today. The only thing we're going to mention is around what it addresses. So gifts and benefits, confidentiality, use of city and committee property, having influence on staff, improper use of influence. So these are the types of things that the code of conduct addresses. You'll get a copy of it to read, and any complaints are brought to the Integrity Commissioner with the results of the inquiry brought back here and also to council. So a pecuniary conflict of interest or financial interest, whether direct or indirect, falls under our Municipal Conflict of Interest Act and needs to be declared. We kind of say when it comes to conflict of interest, if you feel like you have one, you can declare it. Like, I can't provide you advice, Josh can't provide you advice. Like, staff are not able to provide you advice on whether you should declare or not. It's really something that you have to decide. But we always try to take a conservative approach that if you feel you do, it's okay. But if you have something, like, this is a downtown development committee, so if you have something that's common, it's a common conflict of interest for all of you, you don't have, you can't all, like, you wouldn't all declare conflict of interest. So you can vote on those if it's a common interest amongst the whole group. But yeah, we kind of always take a conservative approach. Like, if you feel like it's like, oh, then you have the option to do that. But certainly we have the Integrity Commissioner who can provide advice. But it's certainly something, because sometimes we'll get the questions and I go, I can't advise you on that. I'm not qualified to do that. When a meeting is closed, a member must leave the room if you have a conflict. So if you're in closed session, you declared a conflict, you actually have to leave the room. You can't be in the room. You can be in the room in open, but you can't vote or talk to other members about the decision. The disclosure is recorded in the minutes, and like we already talked about, if you declare, you're still part of the vote, or you're still part of the quorum, sorry. Indirect, again, it's not, there's direct, like I'm going to benefit directly financially from a decision that's made of this committee, but there's also indirect. So if you have a family member or you're a director in a corporation that's going to benefit, those are indirect pecuniary interests. So just because you as an individual aren't going to directly benefit from a decision, there's these indirect interests as well. So just keep that in mind. Here's a couple questions. Like I was kind of saying, do I have a financial interest, positive or negative? Is it going to affect my finances of my spouse, parent, or child? Is it indirect? Are you a shareholder, corporate officer? If yes, and not subject to the exemptions, declare. And do not attempt to influence vote. And if it's enclosed, you got to leave the room. And we talked about this, if it's generally amongst all members, then that's an exception. Or if it's so remote or insignificant, like if it's something that's totally over here, that's really insignificant, there's an exemption there too, but again, I can't tell you what's significant or not, right, so. And you know, we put this in just so that you know, when you're sending emails related to board activity or committee matters, they're subject to the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. So if someone FOI'd and said, you know, I want certain records from the Downtown Development Committee, they'll go through the process and be reviewed by staff, but people can request the records, so I just note that as something that a lot of people who aren't in municipal world or public sector world may not know that, so just be mindful of that. Communications regarding the business of the municipality are considered a record, regardless of the device is personal or not. So a lot of the time too, it's like, oh, I'm using my personal phone, so it doesn't, if it's related to city or committee business, even if it's on personal phones, it is subject to the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. That's all I have. That's a lot, I know, I'm sorry, it's a little overwhelming. We try to get it out of the way right away, but like I said, I am open to any questions, or you have a couple people in the room that are pretty well versed in procedure bylaw, but certainly happy to answer any questions, or if you follow up, that's fine too.
So, okay.
Thank you. Yeah, no problem. Did you want me to stick around for the vote?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
This is a follow-up before we go too far with what Madison's saying. We'll circulate the code of conduct. There's also an accessibility training component that all volunteers and committee members need to do. So we'll circulate that, as well as sending the conflict of interest declaration form that you can have in your file.
There's something wrong with my USB in this computer, but not two of them downstairs. No. Sure, I don't think it's a very big issue. It's just some nice graphics to go along with some placemaking. So I'm gonna move on to our downtown development committee term of reference. Like I just said, we're just doing some placemaking today. So I wanted to share some background very quickly. You've applied to be on the committee, so I'm sure that you're aware of this, but the committee arose from exploring new means of promoting and activating the downtown core with Mayor Shoemaker and City Council looking for deeper accountability needed for these efforts, and essentially taking them within the staff component of the municipal framework, building greater connectivity between the city departments that already service our downtown core. The purpose of the committee is to collaborate with downtown stakeholders, businesses, and community leaders to explore potential shift in how the greater downtown is served. The goal is to better enable all partners to proactively and directly address the unique needs and challenges facing the broader downtown area. This work's grounded in the City of Sault Ste. Marie's corporate strategic plan, which emphasizes the importance of fostering a vibrant, mixed-use downtown that functions as a crucial recreational and economic hub. I'm just going to read the responsibilities of the committee very quick, and then we'll move on to our next item. Connecting Sault Ste. Marie's downtown business and property owners, communities with shared commitment to revitalization and innovation. Advise City Council on downtown related policies, programs, and strategies. Serve as a central point of contact for municipal matters, ensuring commercial property owners, social services, merchants, residents, and stakeholders have a clear and consistent avenue for input. Provide input and guidance related to the core downtown maintenance issues. Act as a form of discussion and greater idea generation to shape thriving, inclusive, and economic resilient downtowns. Provide input on the future use of the unspent levy and assets from the former downtown business improvement area, and act as a catalyst for investment, sponsorship, volunteerism, and overall buy-in of downtown related strategy, events, and activations. I'm sure most of you around the table are aware of this, but I think for the sake of the recording in our first meeting was good to go over a few pieces of the term. We'll move on to 5.3, election officers. Shadow me there on this matter too, but. So what we'll do now is we'll open up the floor for either nominations or self-nominations for the chair. Sure, yeah.
Okay, so we will open up the nominations. We will do a call for nominations 3 times. If there are more than 2 individuals that are nominated and both decide to stand, we do have paper and pen available, so we'll circulate paper for everybody. They can then write the name of the person that they would like to see nominated as a chair or vice chair. Everybody will be asked to hold up their nomination at the same time. So you'll write it down and then we'll ask you to hold up who you're voting for in the event that we have more than 2 candidates or more than 1 candidate.
It's not a secret ballot, that's basically.
Yeah. Is there any questions?
I just have a quick one. Would it be fair to say, this being a brand new committee, to like, and we really, at least I feel anyway, I really don't have a direction of what, like, yeah, we can read the fancy presentations about what our responsibilities and all that kind of stuff are. But I don't have a good feel for to say, okay, this is our job. Right, and because I wouldn't feel comfortable to say, well, I'm gonna take on to be the chair of that without having the confidence of saying, this is what we're, this is our job, this is the things that we have to think about, these are the. At least I would say that. My question is, would it be fair to say I don't know, go chairless, if you will, for a couple of meetings to kind of start putting some meat on the bones and start really getting a sense of where we want to take this committee and beyond, like I said, the language of what we talk about as terms of reference and stuff like that.
I've never been asked.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly can, I can certainly speak to what the involvement of the chair is. Ultimately, the chair is going to make sure the meeting runs smoothly. So the content to me is kind of secondary in the chair role. Like, you want to make sure people are staying on task, but you're coming in, you're making sure you're reading the motions and making sure you have votes and carry, make sure they're carried. You want to make sure that your agenda items are moving smoothly in order. You want to make sure that, like I said, people are staying on task. If people start talking about things that are outside, you want to bring people back into the center of discussion. It's more keeping the order of business and keeping the flow of communication, keeping the meeting on time. Obviously having an understanding of the committee and how it's going to evolve, but I think ultimately the chair is running the meeting, and making sure things are going smoothly and making sure that people are staying on task. So I think certainly we can go over some more of those functions, but I think that it's helpful to have someone, and staff do really support. Like, I've been on a number of boards and committees throughout my tenure with the city. Staff really do support and provide those operational functions and those secretarial functions to help the chairs keep on task and to help the chairs kind of, when you're working on an agenda, we would typically have a draft one, we would send it out, it would come back, you'd have your comments, and then if sometimes we'd open it up and say, hey, does anyone have agenda items they want to bring up? Those types of things, depends on the nature of the committee. But yeah, it's really just someone to keep things on task.
Maybe if I'll add to that, maybe the agenda that's presented today there's no chair present, right? So staff prepared this, was reviewed, so work in future meetings, they work with the future chair to provide the agenda moving forward, so that would help provide some guidance.
Yeah, I understand where you come from. Some of the larger committees, council, or larger non-for-profit boards that are running through my mind. I think those are not that they're not more arduous tasks. We have tasks in front of us, but this feels like an administrative function for sure. Would anyone be comfortable? Are we comfortable with opening up?
Yeah, but
Yep.
I just said,
So resolve that nominations be open for the position of chair of the Downtown Development Committee for the 2025-2026.
So are there any nominations?
From my perspective, and I'm just pitching this to her for the first time 10 seconds ago. But given that this is kind of an evolution from the BIA, which just Queenstown merchants, to kind of a broader downtown responsibility. I think it makes sense, in my mind at least, to have someone who does represent the business community in the downtown be chair or vice chair, which is why I'm suggesting to Sophia that she would fit the bill. But obviously, so I guess I'm happy to nominate her for whichever of those positions she feels comfortable to accept, if any. But I do think that there's some logical kind of continuity there.
Thank you. I mean, I would need to rely on some external sources for support through that. But, you know, if that's what the role involves, be open to it.
So for chair? Sure. That's clarifying, just fine. Okay, perfect, so this word for chair, are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? No? Okay, so seeing none. Resolved that
Yep.
Sophia Stone was declared chairperson of the Downtown Development Committee for 2025-2026. And if we could have somebody to second that, here's me. And a second. And all in favor? The motion carries.
All right, move on to resolve the nominations be open for the position of vice chairperson of the Downtown Development for 2025-2026. All right, I'll call second time. Nomination is open. Speaking of vice chair.
Possible, like, the problem, I don't know anybody here and I don't know each other.
Sure.
And I think if the position of vice chair in case the chair is not here, basically the vice chair doesn't do anything unless.
That's something I chair.
If that,
I have a few people in seniority above me, so I'm not gonna put it quite in that. But yes, they would act as a de facto chair when the chair's not there.
Right.
For all intents. and
could we
purposes.
wait till the second meeting to do this?
But such not under the procedure
Okay.
bylaw, right?
Okay, I'm just asking.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think the typical fashion has been the chair does it, and then if you don't have a vice chair at this particular meeting, you could have someone at the next meeting act as vice chair.
So in all the boards that I've been on, like the vice chair is there to eventually be the successor to the chair in a lot of cases. So a lot of times they're getting valuable training. They're understanding how it's going and you're trying to get a succession plan in place. So I do think the vice chair is an important role that, you know, isn't just a facilitator, but also trying to learning the way to eventually be a leader.
Yes, there's no guaranteed successorship
No.
in these committees though, so like after this term, if everyone reapplies, then that person might be prepared to step into the role. It just doesn't act, it's not quite the same,
It's not automatic.
sorry,
Yeah. I think like on the Sioux College board, it was automatic, right? First vice chair became the.
As long as your term wasn't expired.
Right.
Yes, because you all had a term, but even at the chamber, you know, your vice chair normally would step in, it still has to be voted on by the member. Everything like that, but you're essentially trying to build up the succession of the committee.
So you won't want to be vice chair.
Yeah.
Anyone prepared to nominate Jamie? Don?
Are there any other nominations? I think that was the last caller.
So Jamie self-nominated and then Don was the second. Is that right? Resolved that Jamie McDonald be declared vice chairperson of the Downtown Development Committee for the 2025-2026. Can I have can I see a move it? Don, seconder? Andre? All in favor? Excellent.
No problem, no simultaneous recorded votes required. Okay. Have a good one, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 5.4, the business improvement area transition. We're gonna go over the budget. And I've never done this before, just so everyone's aware. I'm happy to do it, but it is gonna be a learning curve for me.
I'm happy to set that up.
Yeah, can you do that? Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Sorry, it's not on the screen, but I think maybe paper might be better anyway. So taking a look at the budget that staff work quite a bit on, a lot of consultation from various departments. This is one we have brought forward to council that will be deliberated in our December meeting. What we're seeing here at the very top is a revenue of $51,000. This is based off of sponsorships primarily and donations into downtown core based off of historical data that we have. Salaries, we are looking to equip the committee with a full-time position as well as part-time hours to assist with maintenance, event support. And 2 full-time summer students that will run May through to September. So for a total of $141,766 when we're factoring benefits for that full-time. Expenses, we're looking to hopefully outfit the downtown with a vehicle that will assist with maintenance, event setup, even graffiti removal throughout the year. We have operating supplies that are, nondescript, phone communication, things along those lines. Our event expenditures is our highest item, $112,734. When you think of a holistic 12-month calendar and the events that we put on downtown core, it speaks to that. We have a further breakdown that we can discuss at the future.
Just gonna have to included in that, just so you know, a lot of that revenue that comes in are for things like Vivid Fest. So we get a lot of sponsorships, that includes murals. So that cost may seem like it's higher, but a lot of that covers off the mural and other projects and the shows that we're putting on throughout those months. So tree lighting, New Year's Eve, all of those major events.
We have maintenance and alterations. Obviously, there are a myriad of different things that come in throughout the year that need to be addressed, whether it's vandalism or wear and tear of some of the beautification features that need to be upkept so that we're keeping the same complement of, say, plant boxes, things along those lines. Marketing and advertising. We all know that really 10% of every event should be marketing. So we're hoping to offset that with different community partners as well as sponsorships, but that's why the marketing advertising line is at 6,000. Purchased and contracted services go into things that might need to be cleaned or might need to be maintained that you can't ask even just a regular full-time employee to get up on scaffolding or on a lift or something along those lines. Some sort of cleanliness in regards to safety with some things that happen downtown that we're going to need to have special services take care of that. So we've allocated $18,000 for that. We'll see after the first year how close we were on mark. We're pretty confident in that number, but obviously evaluating that in the future. The only other line here that the council will be discussing is our downtown patrols. Unsure what that looks like. So once you factor in these chunks, our operating request is $99,500. The total operating expenses of $187,340. Anyone have any questions in regards to that quick overview of the budget we've presented?
Is that operating request for Norpro specifically? Is that just what
The
that is?
99,000?
Yeah,
No, that's, so right now, the downtown patrols were used to offset the overall budget. So the 99,000 is a request to council, for the difference.
150,000 is the total cost right now.
Okay.
Well, if there's like capital expenses, improvements for this or that, or let's say like storage, bicycle park or something like that, is that budget, is that a separate like city department or is that comes under, because I'm just trying to understand, because I think the budget is very important, because that gives you the parameters of what we as a committee are responsible for. So also the other question or perhaps clarification is how the funding to this committee comes from the city coffers, like from the taxpayers' base. But is there a way to at well, there's sponsorship, which means that people donate money to the downtown, to the city and directly to the downtown, or they specifically say goes to the committee? Like, so my question is there, because I'm thinking moving forward that perhaps this group could explore taking over parking. And parking becomes not just an expense, but a revenue source. We kind of call it a parking benefit district. It is basically a form of management of parking. And I know parking is a big issue because of the impact it has on land use, and also that we've had some studies that I think we need to go to the next step is how do we keep financing this committee and the things that it does, or is that a discussion that actually is bigger? Because I have some passion about that and some interest in how that could be done, and I think it could work well. Because I think the money that is generated from that source used for this purpose is a good fit. It's, you know.
So with regards to the parking, I think that might be a larger future discussion, but based just on the general budget, so the
Right.
revenue streams. Josh has several sponsorship packages, so one for New
Okay,
Year's,
yeah.
event related, so to your thought on the bike racks or the bike lockers. That could be something that could be sponsored. I know there are
Right.
community partners that would be interested in looking at that type of a project, right? So that could be something that the committee decides it wants to go on a route to sponsor bike racks or bike lockers. There's also capital requests, so as part of our annual process, we can make a submission on an annual basis to council for consideration for a capital budget request. And then we also look for a lot of grants. So Josh is working right now on a grant to help support events. So that's something that we're constantly looking at is how do we find partnerships, look for grants and sponsorships to help in addition to the budget that the city council has set aside as an operating budget. So there's a number of different avenues to look to support the initiatives that I think the committee may want to take.
One thing to add to Virginia, you mentioned storage too, so there's a CCAN that's also being sourced to store some of the barricades, weed whackers, that type of infrastructure that the guy had, so it thought of that right at the out front to get a storage unit for that to go and stay property right nearby to where the class is at this point.
But you just the chair probably keeps the order of speaking, but
Go ahead.
Jake, go ahead.
Yeah, so when I look at the budget, like the revenue obviously looks pretty light, there's just a one line item, is there any concept of running events that earn revenue for the committee to come back or something? I think if there's a way that we could, I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing to earn some money off these events. If you make money on an event, it's a good sign that you ran a successful event and people are willing to pay and you had a lot of happy customers. So is that concept within the scope of there?
Not currently, but I think the idea is sound. I think right now what we're doing is being in this kind of transitionary phase, we're taking a look at what was being executed before. Bringing that over, and then we're gonna have to take kind of a holistic look at how much support we have and how much staff time there is to execute those things, right? The other thing is, a lot of our events are an outside third party rents our venue. The venue puts on a successful, or not the venue, sorry, the outside party puts on a successful event, and that's how we help support and elevate, business in town. So getting an idea of, you know, what percentage do we want to be money making? What percentage do we need to feed the entire community and let the entire community be able to participate without a barrier? Is a conversation we should have.
Okay, and then secondly, so if the request is 100,000 or 99.5, how does that compare to what the former EIA was taking from? I know it was a different tax base, but do you know what their value was?
Not off the top of my head, but it's very
218.
comparable when it comes to that.
It was 218.
Okay, so it's half.
Yep.
All right, well, that's good information to know, for sure.
I noticed what's not in this particular budget or included with this budget. We talked about how. Part of the role of the committee is to administer whatever assets or money was left over from the previous BIA. So would it be fair to include that in the budget? Or is there a restriction, like, for example, if there's 100 grand, I'm not saying that I was gonna say, if there's 100 grand in a pool, would it be restricted for certain things or? But I mean, it would still sit as a budget item on this budget, I would think, until that money's gone.
Sorry, over to.
I was just, I know we've done this before, but I don't know what the answer is. Well, we did it with tourism or economic development or both, maybe.
Yeah,
I think there's some legacy money, some substantial money that's gonna come over, as you state, from the legacy BIA. So the promise to the existing BIA that was now being transitioned was to make sure that that money was being reinvested into the core for event activation, in the spirit of the resolution. So the committee would have that at disposal to be used. So it's not necessarily to do operations, but the committee would be the ultimate authority moving forward. So you would have that potentially at disposal, depending what committee you want to focus on, right, in terms of reference.
Just say to Don's point, I think right now, the BIA is still technically in operation, right? So the financials will be being transferred over end of year, so we don't have an accurate number to put there. So I think what we could do is staff is come back and give an update to the committee, what the number is, how to integrate it accordingly.
And the other important point you have right here is like there's been a funding source identified, so council still has to make that decision on road patrols too, right? Because if that is still to be in place, then you wouldn't be looking at 99, you'd be looking at 250.
Yeah, 100%. Like ultimately. Like being part of the tourism transition and stuff like that, I know the discussion was. You know, not having the legacy money just get sucked up by operations, right? To actually be used for. Whatever, whether it's infrastructure downtown, whether it's, you know, to cover certain programming or certain things that, you know. To the benefit of the area, right, to. Contribute to whatever it is, or whether it's by special application or whether it's by board resolution or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's a valuable point. I think that's what this committee is here for, to determine what we do back those legacy funds. Yeah.
Can we elaborate on the downtown patrols, like what the discussions are? Because you could make the argument that it's a very low cost, like much higher.
Yeah, ready to take a stab at that. Right, so we oversee that area under the community services area under Nicole, Virginia area. So we get reports regularly. So there's been about 800 incidents year to date as the last report I got in October. So it breaks it down into with respect to a call that needs to be referred to mental health, call the services or so low entering calls. We have all those stats all broken down. So there have been substantial incidents in place, and there's been varying levels of feedback from the community of what they feel is supportive and not. So that will be coming to as a separate request to budget for council to make a decision on that point. So that was identified as a funding source as an option to backstop this to help offset at this point. So I'm not sure from a staffing perspective if you have any further things you want to add from operations to Plaza, but at that point, that's what the report is on the downtown patrols.
I've been, like all of you, been part of downtown for a long time. I've invested interest in it. I think it's beautiful. I love working in our downtown. We have a systemic issue that's happening right now that's kind of temporarily augmenting the makeup of the downtown. So it's a helpful resource from a staffing perspective of a location. It makes you feel more safe operating, especially with our staff. But at the same time, our municipality is under some trying times, and council's trying to make the best decision they can, keep the funds responsibly if they can. I find it extremely valuable on this end, but I think that's all I have to add.
I'm not saying that it's too big of a number, so it should be double more.
Yeah.
So that would eat up the entire surplus.
Just from a how it came about perspective that we're assigning 150,000 to the downtown's budget. Can't remember the exact time frame, but I think it was very early this year. Motion at council was to explore, I think it was last year, bringing functions of the BIA in-house to the city, right? So marketing and the event planning would be formed by city staff essentially, and this committee would be created to help direct that, which is what did happen. So council approved that. As part of that approval, there was a request to say, what's the proper budget to do that? And the proper budget came out of roughly 300,000, right? So we had 150,000 approved last year at budget time for the downtown patrols, and the desire of council at the time, I know because I pushed for it, was that we assigned that 150 to the downtown operations, knowing it wasn't enough. It's only half of what we need. But so that the merchants could feel some comfort that if we did take over operations of the downtown marketing and event planning, there would be money going into it, at a minimum, 150,000, potentially more if council approves it, or budget meetings in 3 or 4 weeks or something like that. But we want to be sure that we allocated some money, so there will not be money for downtown patrols this coming year unless council funds it as well. So we took the money from downtown patrols to put into downtown event planning marketing so that we could be sure that there was a budget for downtown event planning and marketing. And staff saying, well, we still need patrols, please fund that as well. But all that will be decided at the budget meeting in on December, it's 8th or 9th or something like that. I should know.
But that's something that's gonna stay in this budget.
The 150 will stay here. Oh, you're saying if we.
I mean, any costs, I don't know if that should come out of this specific budget, it's safety.
I think we have to clarify, we do have $150,000 request in, and we also have the 250 in, right, to total, so roughly 400, but
Right.
this show here because it was identified as a source.
I'm just asking if any of it should come out of this budget.
Ultimately, I think that it's probably the committee's decision if council doesn't fund the downtown patrols or only fund or funds this. 200,000 or 150,000, but doesn't fund the patrols. This committee could say, okay, we'll use some of the money to do patrols or don't. But I get your point. Should it be coming out of here? Well, staff certainly think it should come out of the city's general budget items, not this committee's budget items. And
I'm trying to respectfully say that, yeah, the foot patrols do add some value to the downtown businesses that we hear from. Some have other feedback, but it is helping direct people where they kind of need to go in certain instances. But the budget for the downtown committee minus the foot patrols is that 249,500 that you're seeing.
the 249.5 is more than what the BIA's budget is. Is that what you?
Well, it was 218, but the BA budget
BIA
from last year.
So
That was 2.9.
20-30 grand more. If it's approved. That budget, if the other 99,000. Sorry, I'm blocking you.
So I just wanted to make sure that you knew we're not reducing the budget for the downtown. With that 150. Like, so that's our budget's gonna remain at the 249 and we have a separate request for the 150 that you're to council.
Okay.
So it's not gonna reduce it if that's what you were looking at earlier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to understand the nature of the relationship between the police and the patrols, and I mean, ultimately, both are funded by taxpayers. And effectiveness and roles and responsibilities, because I definitely understand that. My sense is that the patrols are less expensive and they're complementary to policing, so but I really feel strongly that we have an opportunity to increase the safety downtown. I think is a top-notch priority for everybody. Now, how it's funded and how the city does that, and how, to me, it seems to make more sense to fund the patrol to get, that's a deterrent right there when there's more, so take some of that money maybe that we're not spending on policing, which is more expensive. Does that make this?
Yeah, maybe I can put it together because there's 3 programs that are run in the downtown core, just for everyone on the committee. So there's the Downtown Ambassador program that comes through Canadian Mental Health Association. There's the Downtown Foot Patrols that we oversee through NORPRO, and then there's Downtown Division Unit 2 that also do patrols. So there's 3 different organizations that are in the downtown, and they all do coordinate amongst each other, but they do different things in the downtown core. And as Division 2 ramps up, they have a day shift that runs Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:30 right now, with planning in the future to make potentially provide more service or different type of service. The NORPRO Foot Patrols offers their service 3 times a day, and the time shifts so that they can tackle different times and different situations amongst the day. So it stays consistent, but then they can switch. And then CMHA has their standard patrols that help, and they also have the wellness bus as well. So all 3 of those are separate, but we do try to coordinate so that there could be improved ways moving forward where all 3 work a little bit better together, but they're overseen by 3 different organizations, all be serving taxpayer where the money comes from.
But so the funding is basically the taxpayer, but at the end of the day, it's from if you're a manager overseeing, like, you wanna get the best value for your security dollar, and I just thought that security patrol has high value based on the cost. I mean, I understand their role is different, but I believe they're complementary to policing and their eyes and feet on the street. So and I again with the social agency. So I don't know how that figures into the way the funding. I mean, it would be perhaps, I don't know, this committee, but perhaps the city needs to kind of look at the downtown safety security thing in a way that you would look at as a business person, saying, how do I get the best value for my, I mean, a police officer makes 100 plus a year, and a foot patrol probably not as much. I don't know. I mean, this is perhaps something that. So if this committee could not have to fund safety and security, we could have more money and also more energy to put into other things that I mean, other things are what we are, I think, good at, and safety and security is such an overwhelming challenge for everybody. So I'm just trying to think that if we start to talk about safety and security downtown at this committee, we could use a lot of our time and energy toward that. Although it's important, I believe that, but I can see perhaps that it's such a big item that could be separate from what we do, and then we can focus on everything else, kind of thing. Maybe is that a reasonable question?
And I understand where you're coming from, Jen, so I hear what you're saying too. What I'll probably maybe say is just based off of the timing of striking this committee, right? The budget's in a few weeks. I don't know if we'll affect very much change in a few weeks' time, even if we had something extremely rousing, we're all on the same page. So I think we understand that security is important. We've had some good dialogue around the table, but for the sake of this meeting, this is probably something we're talking about in 2026, if that's what the committee really agrees on.
One thing that Andre's touched on, and that's very important, you've probably seen it advertised in the community, working on a homelessness strategy and a community safety wellbeing plan right now with ORAP code. So that's being done with the city, social services, and all the different community organizations. So you're touching on that point as well. So that is being worked on amongst the city and social services right now. So there is a part to play there that does kind of tie in nicely to those 3 initiatives.
Yeah, by no means am I saying lose that. I'm just saying for the sake of discussing this budget, we'll probably have to truncate it. Is there any other comments on the budget?
Had a question, follow up to Jason's, sorry, Chair. Follow up to Jason's question on the revenue being allocated for successful events. For something like Poutine Feast, which is generally considered a fairly successful downtown event. Its revenue goes to what currently, like the plaza's revenue?
Yeah, it did go to the plaza revenue stream to offset the cost of the electricity and the waste and the gray water to operate. We make a very small surplus in relation to it. Now, I will say it went through the downtown association to us, so we won't have that funnel approach anymore. So we wanted to enact peddlers fees or something like that. That first thing I know.
So that revenue, in theory, could come to the committee.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Okay, all right, that helps think things through.
It is reflected. Virginia says we actually do have it reflected.
Oh, that's in you. Okay.
Yeah, we reflected a portion of that revenue, so that's one of the events that we actually will get some vendor revenue from, whereas others are sponsorship based or grant based.
On that note, does the city rent, the parking spots for people who want put patios on the streets and stuff like that? Does that revenue goes to the city or does it go to the downtown? Because I think that's an opportunity to lease that space to the businesses, and that money could fund.
Yeah.
That goes through our planning department through a permit application, every start of the season, see if you want to rent your patio and that, so that kind of goes through that permitting process there.
So just going back to what you're saying, I think it's good practice to understand, especially if we start to get in a situation where we're getting overwhelmed for our resources. So if we're in a situation where a lot of people want to run events sometime, hopefully that happens. We are going to have to be able to prioritize what we want to do, what we don't want to do. So I think understanding what the revenue is for each of these activities and hopefully doing it in a manner in which we're revenue positive, and then we can prioritize where we want to put the resources of the committee. So I think that's an important part that we want to kind of put into the culture of what we're doing right off the hop. So I don't know, like Beer Fest, they close the street. Will this committee deploy our resources to help Beer Fest? Right, and do we make any money back from Beer Fest, or is it just we're deploying our resources, right? Right. So I think we need to understand that kind of data to make good decisions.
Just coming to that, what are the goals of this committee? Is it to make money, or is it to downtown, or is it to have great events for everyone to enjoy? I think that's what has to be figured out early on, certainly financial decision, is that the number one goal? Is this something we can do, like come up with the definitive goals or things that we want to achieve?
I think that's critical because the resolution from council was to promote and activate the downtown core. So that's the key thing after sees the whereas, like the now therefore it says to promote and activate the downtown core was the resolution that council delivered. So I think to your point, you want to be able to deliver events, help businesses draw people to the downtown. I think that's kind of the focus, is to make sure that we're supporting our businesses in the greater downtown area and that we're having not just the number of events. We talk a lot about that plaza. We get quality of events. How many people are you drawing per events, and are you growing those events to have a significant, say 2 significant events per month? So that's what we've done a good job. Last year, we're up over 30,000 people attended the plaza, and then Josh and the team are looking to grow the events that have now taken hold year after year.
So how was that measured?
We measure that in terms, we take response to number of people that are attending each event. So we actually do number of counts on the events for each one that's taken.
Was that our goal then, just more higher attendance? Would that be measure success?
If you're asking me, I think it's more than just one answer to that question, right? Because you're going to need to see for the business owners aspect, like how many people are actually coming down to be drawn to help spend dollars with our local businesses. And then also there's another goal of how many events are actually drawing people to for entertainment. A couple different aspects there, not just one. That's fine.
Right, and I think the cost of getting there, right? I mean, that's, if you're spending a bunch of money to bring a bunch of people downtown, or if you're spending a little bit of money to bring a bunch of people downtown, those are different measures of success, right? So you can bring them down for less money. If you can bring the same number of people down for less money, obviously it's greater success.
Yeah, and I think just to really put it out there, I mean, you can't keep something ongoing unless you can find a way to monetize them, right? Like from, you know, you can say, okay, we got all these great events, and as you said, but if it's costing you more money than you're getting out of it, it's not worth it, right? Because you can't, you know, like, I mean, government's fickle, right? You know, when it comes time where it's too much money, they're gonna start looking at it and say, we're spending too much money, we gotta cut back. Taxpayers are up in arms, all that kind of stuff. So you have to find a way to be able to monetize the events and some of the things that you do so that, yes, you can replenish that budget and build upon it, right? So that has to be a goal, in my opinion.
I think, you know, what he's saying, though, we do have to understand kind of what our value is, and I agree with you, because like I said, monetization is a big part of it, and revenue is a big part of it, but we are gonna have to dictate and find out how we want to prioritize where we are putting our resources, right? And that's the big thing, so we might get a lot of different ideas, a lot of things coming out of it, and we have to make some sort of matrix to weigh these things to decide, okay, do we want to put our resources behind this event instead of this event? Because they're both at the same time and we only have so many resources. So we do have to define at some point, and maybe in a future meeting, how are we creating value and how are we quantify how we're creating value? Revenue is one stream of one part of it, number of attendees is another part of it. Maybe there's other things there, you know, cultural aspects or what have you, but we do have to define to be able to make decisions what is our goal, as you were saying, how are we gonna create that value and how are we gonna quantify that? So that's something maybe in a future meeting we can really dive into, because I think that's setting a foundation for the whole community.
Well, what I would suggest is, like, I just ended my term on the tourism board, and they already have a scoring matrix to evaluate events and their impact. Different than, say, what the scope of this committee would be, but I'm sure it could easily be adapted so that you have a scoring matrix, so to speak, to be able to say, here's how we're gonna evaluate this event. Is it something that's worth supporting? And again, you don't want to get into a situation too where you're double dipping, right? Like, you know, if I'll say Beer Fest, right? Beer Fest says, you know, we're gonna try to bring outside visitors in and we're gonna go to tourism to get some cash for marketing and stuff like that. And then they come, say, to the downtown, say, okay, how can you help us? Like, we have to find a way to say, how do we work together so that we're providing the right level of support, right? But without getting into a situation where, you know, you get organizations or people that are double dipping and really not providing the value that.
Or if you have two beer fests and you gotta pick one of them, two people.
Yeah, oh yeah,
that.
for sure, yeah.
Point of clarity is, these are just internal events right now, when you think about it. This is events that, you know, I have 4 categories here. We have marquee events that occur at the plaza, like Poutine Feast, New Year's Eve Puck Drop. You have events occurring at the Roberta Bonheur Pavilion, which they have their own, but it's just another thought of holistic events. You have events in the greater downtown, like Queen Street Cruise, Bond Street Carnival. And then you have key events that were hosted by the Sioux Downtown Association that were supported by downtown merchants or businesses. So street parties, the Greyhound season opener, Moonlight Magic. This is just, you know, internal at this point. So, you know, thinking of if theoretically you wanted to use that additional resources from the BIA to hand out micro grants or something like that, that's over and above what this is right now. So that matrix, do you evaluate it based on just our internal events? You know, just for a point of clarity, when we talk about this budget.
Josh, would we be able to get a list of what's traditionally been hosted in our downtown, not just by the city, but by the businesses themselves, and then by the BIA, obviously, right? I think it will help us make our decision going forward if something like the Greyhound home opener street party is. We know is something that is kind of culturally popular in the zoo, right? So.
Yeah.
To determine whether or not that's something that should continue to get our support.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the understanding of things like the Italian Festival or Rotary Fest are absolutely incredibly complementary to the work we're doing, but we don't necessarily fund it, right? So we can start kind of categorically marking those out. I can absolutely.
The city supports the Greyhounds party. Do the Greyhounds, does any of that money come into downtown fund? So that's probably a massive source of revenue.
Yeah, they actually do a license of occupation, the Greyhounds for that, because that's supporting their specific event, so that would be their event. But we do have money that we do help support from a promotional standpoint on that specific event, and I should get further on.
Yeah, they do it. They apply for a street closure. So the BIA applies for a street closure. It's a partnership with the BIA and the Greyhound. So they work together on hosting that event. The city provides supports as well. So we may be at the event doing an activity. So moving forward, that would be something where we would be taking everything from start to finish. We would take a street closure, do all the setup, arrange for the vendors to come into place, work with the Greyhounds to deliver that season opener street party.
So what
So
about other games? Like what? We're not putting something on for them. Does any of that revenue get back into downtown because it's downtown games?
at the actual game day.
Yeah.
When we're not doing a street closure.
Right.
Like for ticket sales and stuff.
There's a contract between the city and the Greyhounds, so we have a sharing arrangement, but that's with the city of Sault Ste. Marie and the Greyhounds, so that's separate, that would be separate from any BIA mission.
Yeah, you would see the revenue within the like the GFL's cost center, right? So whatever that agreement is,
Yeah.
that would be covered off.
That would go
cost
any,
center.
sharing goes to offset
Yeah.
any cost there.
I'm just having a hard time differentiating what would be downtown businesses and what's a city business that, we're a city connection there.
I think with the list that kind of the mayor and Josh spoke to, because there's different categories, right? So there's some that the BIA ran, there's some that we did in partnership, and there's some that have been legacy. Like everyone knows, Rotary Fest has been here for forever, right? Bonds has been here forever. Like those are all separate, but we're working much closer now with those organizations. So I think that if you have that list and you'll see if it's a Halloween and Queen, do you want to continue the way it's done now, or do you want to change how that's delivered, or how would that function? Have the longest garage sale? Like those are some of the legacy things that have been happening in the BIA. So you have to review that and see what you think is valuable.
So given like the GFL being Greyhounds aside, it's probably the biggest draw to downtown in a number of cases. So would this committee scope include trying to think of ways to get more events in that venue, or collaborate with that venue or the group that's doing that venue?
No, we have a specific team that does that, right? So we have our own KPIs for our staff reports under Nicole right there. Like we have some targets for driving people to come to the facility, how many concerts per year, but so one was announced today. And so we have our own team that has our own metrics to draw for the GFL Warren Guards. So that wouldn't be under the mandate of this committee.
Where, if I may, sir, where I think there might be those some synergies. That we can try and pick up on there is like, the Greyhounds made it to the Memorial Cup or something, then the committee might want to say. Every home game for the Memorial Cup playoff run is to be a street party outside, right? Like that's where we can tap into what's
Yeah.
happening there.
Like, the two groups need to be singing from the same song sheet, right?
Yeah, they're complementary services,
Yeah.
right? The Roberta Bondar Pavilion has its team, the Marina, the Ermitanger Clark. So there are these pieces to the puzzle that still exist independently, but that doesn't mean there can't be connective tissue, right?
Yeah.
We've kind of gone from budget into 5.4.2 event update. Is everyone comfortable with kind of ending our conversation with those two events there? I'll put together that event list, obviously with the minutes about KPIs and what our team's doing. That'll be noted. Any other comments on events?
Right. Go ahead, Mayor.
Just could the list identify who coordinated the event past years?
Yes.
I was just gonna ask, seeing as this is a new committee, kind of in preparation of, went through the city website, there's, seems like there's a lot of overlap when it comes to downtown. So would it be unreasonable for me to ask to be either directed to or sent or have sent to the committee, say like the city's strategic plan in relation to the strategic plan for the downtown? And like, for example, I know the tourism board has a waterfront redevelopment plan coming. I mean, obviously that is gonna impact the downtown and it's gonna impact maybe some of the things that we talked about in this committee. So would it be fair to ask for those things so that we can kind of wrap our heads around some of the different players down here and kind of where we're gonna try to fit into that picture so that you're not really duplicating somebody's effort.
Yeah, a macro view of our downtown core and kind of get a wholesome picture, but I don't see what. I don't know how much past visibility there is.
Well, for example, I'm gonna be sitting on the Economic Development Council as well, and I know one of the pillars of their mandate is downtown. Right, so there's gonna be things dealing with downtown and tourism, for example. So it would be fair, in my mind, to know what specifically have they incorporated into a strategic plan, for example, saying, okay, well, you know, our strategic plan is this is how it relates to the downtown. Just like I'm sure the city has a strategic plan and then says, okay, as it relates to downtown, these are the things that we're trying to accomplish, right? So that then we can look at that and say, okay, well, how do we wrap our heads around this? What are the challenges that we're gonna take on? Does it match with our mandate? You know, how could we synergize with other committees who may be dealing with the same issues, you know, sharing thoughts, sharing ideas so that, you know.
I might suggest, so we have the program strategic plan, that does have the downtown mentioned, we also have our tourism.
Yeah,
We also
100%, yeah.
have our EDC, which we also oversee, so I think it's some coordination just to kind of, you know, try and look for some.
100%, yeah.
Josh, do you know if the BIA has a 5-year strategic plan and where they are in that, or could you find that out?
Yes.
Because I think that would be, instead of starting, you know, this committee's work from with a re-envisioning of the strategic plan, maybe it's picking up from where they left off.
Jen, you mentioned a couple times about the pavilion, so can you just brief us on, so who's controlling that and how that intersects with the plaza?
So that does still fall under community services, but Rick Warren's our supervisor over at Marina and at the Bergwana. So he'd execute events just like I would at the plaza, and there are times when there's overlap, there are times when there's the on there for rain date, but they have enough programming like the plaza to allow themselves to understand.
And there were 71 events at the plaza throughout this year so far, our record is 90, so. No, at the Bondar, sorry, so the Bondar has been anywhere from 60 to 90 and we're seen by the team, so we track all the different types of events that are there. This year we did 71, was still reporting October, there's not many in October. Well, seasonality, but
Yeah.
that's typically the number of events we would get anywhere between 60 and 90 throughout the year. Okay. That's just at the Bondar, the plaza's totally separate.
And I think just this committee is a change from what had been happening in the past, like the BIA was only focused on Tweed. And this committee's boundaries are Josh, you know, south of
Pim to
Pim to, it'll be Huron, including the Canal District, south of Wellington, Albert.
we're looking at Albert just because of the dense, you know, residential.
Right. So right to the water.
Right to the water.
And it didn't previously get captured by the BIA,
Yeah.
the pavilion specifically. or the Canal District, or the Parks Canada site, or the Gateway site. Now it will all be under the purview of where we can have events and where we.
And that's why kind of the recommendations, because a lot of it just falls under community services. So you have the gardens that falls under community services, you have the Vonda that falls under community services, you have the plaza that falls under community services, and also it's all coordinated through this area right here. So it'd be easy to understand what's taking place because the city runs all those areas.
Just on a note, I know we're talking budget, but something that I would like to be clarified is the role of the committee. We talk a lot about events and security, but we didn't really talk about, is this committee involved at all in with the planning department with regards to, you know, how the zoning and all these things that affect really how the downtown is going to develop moving forward? That's an area that I'm particularly interested in, but I haven't heard in the conversation or in the information we've provided exactly what the role or the boundaries of our committee. And I think Brett, the reason I'm asking that, I'm very interested in the way we design streets and the way we design, like the waterfront development project's a big part of that. Parking's a big part of that. So all these things, does that fall within our budget and our committee, or is that something on the outside of this kind of because I believe this committee has an opportunity to perhaps provide input into those things that actually can affect how successful downtown is. Because it's not just about events. I know we talk about events, but there's much more to it than that. I believe, to me, it's like the success of downtown is to have more people living downtown. And to do that, you need to have the planning department involved, and you need to have zoning. And I know the city has done a lot in that regard, but I think I'm just wondering if this committee's role has an opportunity to have a say or ideas of how we could do things or continue to do things that have worked well, and I think maybe go a little further with those things. I'm looking at pedestrianization of the downtown. How do we make the downtown more accessible? You know, is that our role? We can talk about that, but I think it's an opportunity for me and us to have some input on those things. And I think planning part of this committee. Or should we have somebody from the planning department sitting here, because I feel that the way we design and the way we build the downtown will dramatically affect its success or lack thereof. So it's just something that because we're talking budget, but I haven't heard that.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So Peter Tanaz, the director of planning, has been part of the transition committee that we have. So anything that comes from this committee, they're actually a resource. So we already have like 4 staff members here right today.
Yeah.
If we had the whole team, we probably have 12 of us.
Okay.
So for this first initial transition meeting, we had the 4 of us. But if there's something that's on the agenda and there needs to be a resource coming, I'd expect the director of planning would be here to speak to that, or one of his delegates, if there's something that they want to put on the agenda. And they work closely with respect to community services in terms of accessibility and accessibility coordinator. So I see Virginia has her hand up there. She wants to add
So-
a manager here.
Right, so going forward, if say something is important that I feel the committee could talk about or bring, that is unrelated to events, it's a matter of me to put up a resolution.
There's also the terms of reference you have to follow, that's the guide to, right, for the committee. So it depends if it's in the scope, but okay.
And I was just gonna, so with some of our other committees, PrAC, for example, when the waterfront development plan was underway, we would invite the staff person that's responsible for that to come to the committee, provide a presentation. It's an opportunity for feedback. So if we know, say, another phase of Queen Street is coming along, we have the opportunity to, personally invite you to have that presentation by the committee members and have more of a dialogue. So we try to make sure that the different committees that are relevant to the different plans that are coming down are kind of connected, so they have that engagement opportunity.
Because I'm sure that the people who represent the businesses and stuff have a lot to say about how Queen Street is designed or going forward, but I'm just asking that question because we were talking budget and I didn't see that reflected. So I don't understand exactly what the parameters of this committee are and what can be discussed.
Yeah, and I think those types of bigger discussions, those reside with the department, but we try to make sure that we have those engagement opportunities. And I know with the last phase of Queen Street, there was significant consultation that was done with all of the businesses in that recent section that were completed. But yeah, we would make sure that we were bringing those to the committee so they have an opportunity for engagement. If there's open houses, we'll send you out the invite so that you know when those open houses are happening so that they don't get missed in just the, in the other way. We want to make sure that you're able to participate and provide feedback.
And to Virginia's point, if there's a change in how parking lots were on or being ran or changes in sizes or of adding more, like anything like that, this could come to this committee for information and that could be passed along for context to corporate areas. And we did that with the BIA as well. We attended open house before and there was a change of parking. So that dialogue would continue.
So does that feed into council? So,
Everything comes up in council, right?
but would the committee provide any type of issue or anything like that, or is that something?
Anything can be brought to council as a recommendation, right? So if it's something specific that's not on parking events, you could have discussion here and bring it through the chair and have a resolution or recommendation. It's up to council to
Sure.
review it.
But to add to Andre's point though, I do feel that there's an opportunity with this committee to play a larger role than just planning events. Like I'm a non-voting member of the Toronto Board of Trade, and they send me stuff all the time, and they send me a copy of their waterfront plan, and obviously that's a lot greater than the scope of what we would do here, for example. But they talked about how building sections where people live, they work, and they play there, right? And how it's connected to other parts of the city. Because I said I got friends in Toronto, nobody goes downtown, for example. Right, so they say, okay, well, how do we, if they're coming here, how can we make it more attractive for them to live here? So I think that lends itself to building out, right? So for example, I'll be honest, I voted no from the tourism board to give the downtown plaza money, right? And my rationale was really the way it was done at the time. Like there's not something that I would say to myself, hey, why am I going there? What's drawing me there? Now there's events and some other stuff that the market's been integrated and all that kind of stuff, right? But I mean, ultimately, to get maximum use, you draw from the area, right? People say if they live on East Street over there in some of those buildings, coming out of those buildings to buy food, buy clothing, whatever it is. So how do you encourage the development to go in that direction? We're saying, okay, there's going to be a lot of areas in downtown that are underutilized. Why are they underutilized? Because years of neglect, right? Bad landlords, bad building owners, bad whatever, right? I mean, the city took a large leap when they bought the hospital, right? I said, I was a critic of that. I still don't feel like that was the wisest use of the money, but that's the idea, right? Is to say, okay, well, how are we going to reuse that area to drive people back into the downtown, redevelop the downtown, become, as Andre pointed out, more friendly to, pedestrians, more friendly to disabled people, seniors, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's where the opportunity in this committee lies, rather than being a yes or no vote for putting on an event. That's part of it, sure. But I think there's a bigger role or a bigger potential for the committee to be able to provide input on how we live and use the downtown, other than just running events.
Yeah, and I think to council's point, the idea that integrating it tighter into the different departments, speaks to that. How can we be a conduit through these different departments and through the committee? That said, I feel like we're starting to run a little long in the tooth. If everyone's okay with moving on, is that okay?
Yeah.
I'll just say that I will, if you have any questions about the events, and I know we just had a conversation about moving further afield of that. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me individually if you feel like you can involved somehow, I will get that event list prepared. The last point, just very quickly, the Cultural Vitality Committee's graffiti subcommittee, in October, the city struck a graffiti subcommittee, they just had their first meeting. We have a slot available around that table, so looking to see if anyone would like to sit on that subcommittee as well. So.
I could.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. Resolved that Dennis Hugh will be appointed to the Cultural Vitality Committee, graffiti subcommittee as a community resource. And I have a mover. Jay, seconder. Second. Oh, yeah, Mr. Mayor. Okay, all in favor? Great, thank you so much. The next meeting, I think it would. I'll give the chair, I'm sorry. Apologies.
No, it's okay, you can do it.
Just before we go
Yes.
too far, but and sometimes you have new business on here. Not today, but Josh, for those who don't know, was the director of the BIA, so he is very well versed in the Downtown Association. I know he undersold himself in his introductory remarks, but he's got the expertise to do this. So I think if there's anything, if there's a question on what role this committee plays, Josh will be able to tell you, here's what has historically been done by the BIA, and that's a pretty good guidepost for whether or not we would venture into a new area. So Josh will look to you to be our guiding light on those types of questions as they arise, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, appreciate that. Yeah, I will circulate, if you haven't seen my email, my phone number, emailing you, it's available to you, I'll follow up, but please, that's, wouldn't say exploratory phases, but we are in early stages of the committee, and that's what I'm here for, the city resource to have those conversations outside of forum.
I do a question, Josh, regarding the game tape, for lack of a better word, for the BIA. Talking about synergy, talking about connectivity, how much of an overview is there, or how was there made historically, even in the last, say, 5 to 10 years, working with these different departments that can be reviewed individually? Is there source material that has been compiled, even successes over the last few years that we can look at? Because I think therein lies some opportunity to see like what was done, obviously what can be improved upon. Even just for myself out of curiosity, just to read up on it.
Sure, fair. Yeah, there are some resources that staff put together in regards to paving the way for this term of reference that I think are fair to share based on the fact that they're available publicly, as well as there are a number of years worth of minutes at the BIA website that maybe I can direct you to, as well as I think someone around this table referenced strategic plans and things along those lines that again are public information as well as we have right now. So I think absolutely there's some pieces, as well as some AGM reports and some great annual general meeting reports that give quick highlights over the work the BIA has done over a number of years. So yeah, I think that's another great comment that we can kind of compile that gives us an idea, a roadmap as to where we are and where we need to merge to the next part of the highway. Yeah. In regards to our next meeting, Virginia and I were just speaking, it'd be great to have our next meeting after council approves the budget. I think that staff above me has kind of directed that maybe we would meet monthly for the first few months and then splinter off quarterly once we have kind of an understanding of what we're doing, what our KPIs are in regards to that. So just kind of pointed out a December 11th meeting, potentially, if people are available, I can circulate. I'm also happy if people who aren't sure at this table to circulate a poll. Is everyone comfortable with meeting sometime in December before we get too deep into the month?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, if everyone's okay, I'll send a poll out with a couple options and coordinate with the different offices, with that being one of those dates, and then we'll set our next date. Now the chair would do a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
See anyone who wants to move that? Don? Second, we'll get you in on the board. Okay, excellent. Do we have to do any, we're all in favor of adjourning? All in favor?
We have all in favor?